In today's episode, we are going to unpack the debacle that is the FTX collapse going on, the Sam Bankman-Fried drama that's unfolding before us all in crypto, and we're going to cover lessons that can be learned, how to make sure that you're improving your security for your own digital assets moving forward, and a whole bunch more in today's episode. So without further ado, let's dive in. Hey everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Quantum Resistant Ledger channel, the place where you come for the crypto and stay for the quantum. In today's episode, we are going to be unpacking in a QRL news roundtable this entire FTX debacle, Sam Bankman-Fried drama, so to speak. And there's a lot to unpack. It's really pressing news in crypto and blockchain. And so I am joined here with Michael Strike from the QRL team to have a good discussion on a number of things. Michael, it's good to have you with me in this discussion today.
Yeah, let's chat. Let's talk about this.
Yeah. So before we jump into the conversation and go back and forth on a few things, this topic of FTX, the collapse of it, the domino effects there, Sam Bankman-Fried. There's a lot of stuff in the news that's going on. By the time this comes out, even more will have come out. So I think the main intention, so that you can get the most value out of watching this, is we're going to first just give a brief context, give a little bit of origins on FTX, Alameda Research, Sam Bankman-Fried, and then lead up to the point that we're at currently today, how this affects the industry as a whole and lessons that can be learned both individually and organizations moving forward on the security side as an individual and collectively. So Michael, do you want to jump right in? I will maybe I'll unpack a little bit of origins for people and then we can go from there.
Yeah, sounds good.
Yeah. So where to start with this? I think it's best to kind of start out with the origins of prior to FTX and Alameda Research. It all kind of starts with Sam Bankman-Fried, who is the founder, young kind of MIT grad, whiz kid. He started out his career early. He was a quant on Jane Street. Jane Street is a trading firm, a market maker, one of the biggest in the world. So obviously he was very good at his role there. Eventually moved into, he had a Bitcoin arbitrage in Japan where he was on a daily basis. He had figured out a way to arbitrage and, buy on one exchange, be able to move it over in a very sophisticated way over to another exchange, making a profit on that, and being by profit millions of dollars a day. And that's kind of where Alameda Research started. And when you hear the name Alameda Research, you might think of, a research firm. It sounds pretty official, but it really stems from when he was trying to get into the Japanese banks. They wouldn't take him seriously because they're like, who's this? If it was related to crypto, he put the name research in there. So they kind of took, the idea of it more seriously. Obviously there's more to the story, but that has an element into why it's named Alameda Research. So Alameda Research is a trading arm that was created and founded in, I think, 2017. Prior to this, that's, when he ran, the arbitrage. And then FTX was launched, the exchange was launched on the back of that in 2019. So a big purpose of the exchange was to provide value or provide low-cost capital to Alameda, which is, having those two tied together is a bit, kind of crazy in itself. Obviously, you have, a market maker, but having those two under the same roof, which we'll get to in a little bit, is a bit kind of like, raises a bit of a red flag. But really, to close out on who Sam Bankman-Fried is, he is, an effective altruist, so to speak, which is a bit contradictory to, the stuff that's going on now. But really, it's kind of nuts with everything that's going on right now, because he was the second highest donor to the Democratic Party. He was cozied up with many regulators, and a lot of people thought, hey, this is just, the Warren Buffett of, the crypto world. And, he was on the cover of, Fortune and, other publications. And now he could end up going to jail for a really long time. FTX, obviously, it's in a terrible position, both internationally, FTX to US, and, the crazy tree of their organization. Maybe I can pop that up in a little bit. But that's kind of a 2-3 minute background real quick on, who SBF is. And it's just crazy to see where stuff is with, their bankruptcy filing recently. Michael, fill in any of those holes there for me.
No, that sums it up. He, and as I'm watching this story unfold, I I'm thinking to myself constantly, why, as a community, as an ecosystem, why are we continually surprised with events like this when they happen? How long ago was Luna?
Quadriga CX years back. For those of you who aren't familiar with that name, go watch the documentary Trust No One on Netflix that covers that. Canadian exchange, much smaller scale, goes back to the Mt. Gox days, but like we can continue seeing it more and more. And obviously, based on the size of the industry, the scale of magnitude is just massive. I think in their filing bankruptcy, it was over $10 billion. And it's just it's unfortunate on a number of levels. I have a ton of sympathy for both retail and even organizations that are going bankrupt as a byproduct of this, from BlockFi and others that are dealing with it due to the secondary effects. So it's quite shocking to see. And also I think one other important part or crazy part is during this entire time, similar to the Luna case with Do Kwon, of tweeting in real time in the days leading up to, hey, everything is fine. Sam Bankman-Fried was doing the same thing. He was trying to ensure people that, hey, this all these issues and us being crazy levered is only for FTX International, when in reality, FTX US was just as impacted in the same manner. They all sat under the same roof. So, Michael,
Let's talk about that.
Yeah, let's talk about that a little. Unpack that a little, and I'm going to piggyback off you.
Yeah, no problem. Okay. There's that meme, right, with the dog and the house is on fire. Everything's fine. That's the catch-22 of that's the catch-22 is, if you're a sketchy actor and you're doing things that are questionable, or in this case, highly questionable. In saying that, and the only narrative you have at that point is everything is fine, because the moment you start to say everything is not fine, that starts to see the sods of doubt, right, and self FUD. And I don't know. Aside from exchanges getting their hands caught in the cookie jar, has anyone ever faulted on the side of transparency and saying, yeah, we've got some liquidity issues, but we're working on it? Have you ever heard that before? No, it's polarized. It's everything is fine, or, oh crap, we've got a huge $10 billion problem. It just pops out of nowhere, right? Yeah. So who's to blame for this? Where does the blame lie? And I'm going to give an opinion on this. It might be somewhat unpopular, but I have given this some thought. I think, I mean, obviously SBF, Sam, has the lion's share of the blame. There was what appears to be a tremendous amount of misdirection, not just in narratives, but also actions and things that were happening behind the scenes, in which it's the same story over and over and over again. It's privatized profits and socialized losses, right? So if in using customers' funds for, let's run through it. Leverage trading, we're laundering essentially from FTX into different shell companies. Margin trading.
Leveraging the FTT token when underneath that is really just poof. Yeah.
And printing, essentially creating your own token, the FTT token, and then using that as collateral, the same money that you print. Okay, so Ryan, I'm thinking about, like, if I were to try and make sure that I hit every single checklist of financial fraud, of things that would put me in jail.
Yeah.
And for you and for the community out there, just think for a moment, did he miss anything? So, in starting the narrative, if you go back to the YouTube videos, there's a lot of talk of philanthropy and things like that. So the amount of misdirection that appears to have happened is staggering in this, and it's disappointing and it's upsetting. It's a lot of things. So back to Mary, who's to blame on this? SBF clearly has a large hand of responsibility in this, but I'm also gonna put some blame on our own ecosystem, on the cryptocurrency community, on crypto Twitter, on influencers, people like that we empowered SBF to become the megalomaniac of crypto that ultimately came to be. Essentially, because when we deviate away from the original ideologies of of keeping of self-sovereignty of your crypto, keeping your own private keys. We're polluting those ideals with band-aids and workarounds. The whole point is so that you have self-sovereignty, so that you have your own keys, you have your own money. All the centralized exchanges is just it's just sad.
Yeah, and there's a situation too where there's other, big people that are involved too. And when I say people, I mean like it was venture capital backed. So there's fault there in terms of, backing this person who they, might have been naively believing was a winner for whatever reasons. But leaked documents have come out that, they were promising, high returns with no risk. And obviously I think they were kind of leaning on the market maker side of, hey, like, I guess maybe they're doing something right here. But number of red flags were there. And then also alongside that, them being, venture backed in a sense. Also, one other big part is, in the US, there's still, from the SEC and the CFTC, there's still, it's such a gray area to work within. And this is not a case where it's like moving forward. I think that there's a lot of projects that, would love to have a little bit more guidance in terms of, how to move forward with their project in the crypto space. But this what we're talking about right now with FTX is just so far proportionally out of that this is just, downright illegal. But yeah, there's a number of, things that contributed to him and his organization, getting to the point it did. And, there's two sides where part of me is saying, hey, it's downright fraud, which I think it definitely is. But there's part of me that thinks, it snowballed. Like it turned there. When was the point that the team crossed the line and it became something where they got, too and over their head in terms of like saying, shoot, we're, a bit too levered, or, we're in trouble here with Alameda. Okay, what's our other option? Let's, take actual customer funds from FTX and start, try to save this ship as it's, sinking into the sea. But yeah, it's super unfortunate on a number of levels. And I think, we're seeing some ramifications of that. I think last week, Genesis said, hey, we don't have any credit exposure to FTX. A couple days ago, they were saying, we've hired, I think their line was, hey, we hired advisors and we're exploring, best options. So this is, important because I think DCG, which they own CoinDesk, Foundry, Grayscale, et cetera, they have, half a dozen or 1.5 dozen, ETFs. They're some of the largest holders of Bitcoin, I think, also over $10 billion worth. And all the big whales give money to Genesis. So they're definitely at the center of, the industry, and the custody, it helps institutions earn yield. So like there's going to be a lot of secondary effects where, we're going to see this play out, and it's just unfortunate all around. But, getting back to your point about, hey, where's the buck lie? There's a lot to unpack.
So there's a few other things that people just don't really talk about. So most people have heard someone say, not your keys, not your coins, not your node, not your rules. That's pretty standard in crypto. There's some other liabilities that don't really get discussed. For example, most people understand that will only ever be 21 million Bitcoin.
Yep.
But there's a caveat to that. There will only be up to 21 million Bitcoin on chain. If I take my Bitcoin and I move it over to a centralized exchange, that's essentially an uncollateralized loan based on trust, which trust goes against the trustless. That's the whole point of crypto, right? Who's to say I send my Bitcoin over to FTX? Okay, they've got their own on-chain wallet, but maybe those on-chain wallets aren't necessarily transparent. That's why transparency, you'll see a lot of the exchanges after this FTX collapse came out and said, hey, these are our hot wallets. They might have listed some cold wallets too, but you can add up and look at our assets, and then you can compare that to whatever our liabilities are. But without that transparency, in theory, in the market space, if you include the centralized exchanges as part of the market, you could have 25 million Bitcoin, you could have 30 million, you could have 40 million, you could have essentially infinite or close to infinite amount of Bitcoin, because that's just a SQL database entry on the inside, right? Yeah, you can always add up the on chain Bitcoin, but only if you have those addresses, only if you know what they are. Exchanges, a lot of don't publish that information. Why don't they publish that? Because that's a liability. Is it could be a liability, with trust, right? If you had that information, you may not trust them because you may uncover something that's not supposed to be happening. And unfortunately, as we learn over and over and again in this ecosystem, is every one of these infractions that we take as an ecosystem, as a community, as crypto enthusiasts, every time we start to violate the tenets of crypto, decentralization, transparency, the computational logic, meaning code is law, the trustless aspect, the security aspect, especially the decentralization one, that's just number one. Every time we start to make compromises in the interests of personal gain, we want to be able to leverage, we want to be able to do margin, we want to whatever it may be. Every time we compromise that, we incur a debt to the future, and eventually all of those debts add up, and somebody's going to have to pay. And that's what we're doing over and over and over again. Eventually, I think that enough people will start to understand crypto for what it's supposed to be, in that you're supposed to be your own bank. The use cases, right, of a lot of projects are bank the unbanked, right? There's a lot of people in the world that don't have the luxury of being able to bank. So in many parts of the world, not only do you have to spin up to being able to bank, and then be able to understand, oh, I am my own bank, and that is a learning curve. And now that I'm kind of talking about this, this will probably still take years.
Yeah, and it's going to take time. It's like, obviously it's covered in, when was the sovereign individual written? But like, obviously there's like, you could read that, you could read, digital gold, any books on, Bitcoin. It takes time. Like, obviously everyone has to get over that hurdle to some point. And obviously there's stepping stones to that, but it's important to be thinking about. And there's also levels too, in terms of, there are some instances for some people that, maybe they're the type of person that just loses something every month, or every, here and there all the time. Maybe it makes sense for someone like that to, hey, maybe for a bit, it's not the best solution, but maybe keep your crypto for a little while on Coinbase. Obviously, it's probably better off to, put it on a ledger or a Trezor, but for the time being, at least that's a publicly traded company that gets audited quarterly. But obviously, I think then from there, obviously, then people, you want them to, have self custody and, be able to have full, confidence and control over where it is in the future. But yeah, it's just one of those things too, also where, especially on the, when people are talking about lending, crypto to earn yield as well, there's so many trade-offs there as well. So if you're holding a certain amount of crypto, whether it's in the thousands of dollars or hundreds of thousands of dollars, it's as if you hold cash. Each year you hold cash, obviously it keeps getting devalued as more money gets printed. If people are holding a lot of crypto, they might be thinking, hey, I could earn a few extra percentage on this. But the massive trade-off is that if you put your crypto into one of these places where it could be sketchy or vulnerable, you could lose the whole bag. And so what's that trade-off to you? So you really have to be cognizant of that when you're making decisions. And a lot of times, there's a lot of stuff in crypto that looks shiny and, it looks, hey, this is the nice new thing, but you really have to go back to what we've talked about a number of times, the tenets of it, and understanding that, hey, you can't just, there's weaknesses in a lot of these systems. And even in DeFi, where a lot of stuff is, promising to be the opposite of centralization, there's centralized components of those as well. So it's important to always keep this in mind, especially, in the situation climate we're in, and moving forward, we're going to see more of this. These, unfortunately, bad situations aren't going to, just magically stop. But as an individual or an organization, you can try to mitigate the risk yourself. Michael, anywhere to kind of close out at that point? I think I've kind of wrapped up my thoughts on that.
I'd like to know what the community thinks. I'm saying honestly, wholeheartedly that, yeah, I mean, SBF has 99% of the blame. maybe somewhere around there, but there's also a marginal amount of accountability to the ecosystem itself. And maybe that will level off as people enter the ecosystem and they become more and more familiar with crypto.
Thanks. And just like all, there's going to be bumps along the road as well. And obviously, lessons learned, so to speak. Obviously this one's, wasn't a good one in terms of, a lot of people, lost a lot of money in the, SBF FTX thing. And it's going to obviously unfold even more over the coming months. But as a closeout to this episode, Michael, I think it would be good to touching on, the importance of, being able to, have good security around your assets, being forward facing in that regard. Touching back to our project, the QRL, could you touch on, in terms of, let's say someone's watching this right now, and maybe they have, they hold a variety of crypto. Maybe they're even at the point now where they, have self custody. They're pretty forward facing in terms of, hey, I want to make sure I have control over, my own keys, make sure I'm keeping that secure. But they're thinking about, hey, what does the future have in store potentially, 2, 10, 20 years down the road? How does the QRL play into that security and moving forward, or how does it play like a role, or maybe sit laterally alongside what they're currently doing?
So for those that are new to the QRL, our project is a forward-thinking cryptocurrency that's purpose built to be quantum computer resistant. If you're unfamiliar with cryptocurrencies and the potential intersection of cryptocurrencies and blockchain and quantum computers, jump into our Discord group or go to our website www.theqrl.org. But essentially, there are some inherent security risks with the asymmetric cryptography of Bitcoin, and pretty much 99.9% of altcoins that exist in the ecosystem. And this is regarding the digital signature algorithm and how transactions essentially get signed. In that, I think it's generally accepted that a sufficiently powerful quantum computer running a Shor's algorithm or a derivative of Shor's algorithm in order to be able to factorize numbers together can essentially break Bitcoin. Now, the key qualifier there is a sufficiently powerful quantum computer. So what we do on the project is we try to educate those, aggregate, analyze, and prepare for those risks that might be in the future. So by the time that it starts to become more of a household quantifiable risk that people really start to understand, that we already have the groundwork laid out, and not just the groundwork laid out, but have been running in production successfully, for years. We've been running for several years now, about 5. I think we're on our 5th year as far as the Genesis block. So the point is, if the intersection of blockchain, quantum computers, and state-of-the-art cryptography is of interest to you, join our Discord community. Links are below. Go to our website, www.theqrl.org. Hit that like button. Subscribe to our channel. The QRL project is at the forefront of this blockchain and quantum computer intersection. If you want to know more about this topic, this is where you need to be. Thank you, Ryan.
Awesome. Thank you, Michael. Appreciate it. For all those you watching, just as Michael said, appreciate you taking the time to watch this. And throughout all the stuff, through the ups and downs, regardless, bear bull market, be sure just to be proactive. Keep your crypto secure. Make sure that you're staying knowledgeable about stuff to the best of your ability. There's so much going on each day, each hour, each week within the space. So you being proactive is taking a bigger step than the majority of people who aren't doing so. And you can help arm not only yourself, but others around you to make sure that you have stability there in terms of your digital assets. So, Michael, have a great rest of your day. And everyone watching, we look forward to seeing you in the next QRL episode. Thank you.